Then the infinitude found release, and finally the darkness broke, filling it with life. Every existence multiplied by possibility, and spread out before space and time in infinite measure. Life, a precious gift, persevering in the face of every obstacle. Until finally, the age of heroes was born. Well, here we are. The final part of my DC universe has arrived. In Phase 1 we began this universe off the heels of James Gunn's own plans for his own universe. We then built upon that with several more projects in Phase 1 and began expanding with more characters in Phase 2. And now we have arrived at the third and final chapter of this universe, Phase 3. Now, I've gone in depth with the timelines and past entries of this series, so to help streamline things a little bit more, I've made these diagrams to help explain the timeline in order with Phase 1 and Phase 2. So Phase 1 goes Superman Legacy, Brave and the Bold, Green Lantern, The Flash, the first season of our Green Lantern HBO Max series, Wonder Woman, Batman Death of the Family, Green Lantern Men and Monsters, and the first Justice League film. And then Phase 2 goes Superman Son of Krypton, Green Lantern Fear and Yellow, the third part of that trilogy, Batman White Knight, also the third part of that respective trilogy, The Flash Gorilla City, which is the second part of that one, Green Arrow, which is an HBO Max series, Gotham Knights, Season 1, Teen Titans, a movie, and finally Justice League Tower of Babel. If you want to go see the Phase 1 and Phase 2 videos, then you can go have a look at the playlist. You'll find all the previous entries in this series there. But I know you're going to ask, what does this mean for Phase 3? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down the final phase of projects for my DC Universe and end this story. Now, for all intents and purposes, there's not going to be any casting stuff in this one because I just want to get straight to the point and deliver what stuff I would do for Phase 3 and how I would more or less close out the universe. So I'm going to start off with the second film in Wonder Woman's trilogy. In a similar manner to Temple of Doom, this movie will be a prequel, set prior to the events of the first movie when Diana's faced with a trial by fire when Ares stages a conquest on her home, Themyscira. This essentially acts as Diana's origin story in this universe as the conflict with Ares begins to make her understand what it means to be a warrior and a hero to her people. This is very much a full-on war movie, with Diana trying to defeat Ares before he can conquer all of Themyscira and make his presence known to the rest of the wider world. It all comes to a head in the final battle when Diana gets the upper hand in this final conflict and manages to get the killing blow in on Ares, winning the conflict and saving her home. And this will also directly set up the first Wonder Woman film, which you saw in Phase 1, with the post-credit scene, or this film better yet ending with Steve Trevor's plane crash landing on the ocean side of the island, more or less. And that brings us to Gotham with the second season of Gotham Knights. Now, as a quick refresher for those who are just tuning into this series, in the second Justice League movie, Tower of Babel, we saw Batman quit the team after his contingency plans fell into the arms of the bad guys, and as a result he has returned to Gotham to solely put his focus on the city. But this turns out to be his undoing, as upon his return to the Batcave one night, Bruce is attacked by Deathstroke, and the two engage in a brutal fight which ends with both of them dying as the Batcave is destroyed, and in the aftermath Bruce's identity as Batman is publicly revealed to the world. This leaves the Bat family in shock as they now come to terms with a Gotham that doesn't have a Batman to protect it. With Tim still occupied leading the Titans, this leaves Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl and Red Hood to solve the mystery of Batman's death, which then leads them to the Court of Owls. Now, the Court were responsible for sending Deathstroke after Batman and knew this would be the final fight for the both of them. Now, the series initially starts out as a detective story as the Bat family attempt to figure out how Bruce was killed and why Deathstroke would go after him like this. With the Batcave and Wayne Manor destroyed, the now dubbed quote-unquote Gotham Knights take up refuge in the Belfry, an off-the-books hidden base that Bruce kept for emergencies only. The Knights, including Alfred, who was out of the manor at the time, take up refuge here and in the penultimate episode would discover the true conspiracy surrounding Bruce's death. At the end, the main leaders of the Corps are murdered by Jason, and the Knights agree to put aside their own differences and defend Gotham in Bruce's honour, with none of them taking on the Batman mantle, just agreeing to act as equal heroes protecting the city. and Alfred also finally decides to retire and he leaves Gotham to return to England. And now we move on to Season 2 of Green Arrow. This season is going to introduce John Diggle as a new member of Team Arrow, with Roy Harper also having joined the group in between seasons. So this means that we do have a Team Arrow in my DCU. Now, Season 2 will establish further links to the universe by revealing that Oliver's training actually came from the League of Assassins, which explains how he and Malcolm Merlyn knew each other, as during his stay on the island of Lian Yu, Oliver was Malcolm's student. Now, it transpires in present-day events, from the perspective of Team Arrow, that Malcolm has come out of retirement because the League of Assassins have all been wiped out, including Talia herself, which can also warrant a cameo from one or two members of the Bat family. Now, this series would see Oliver and Team Arrow form an uneasy alliance with Malcolm to investigate who was responsible for wiping out the League. Eventually, Oliver discovers it to be the Ninth Circle, formerly a part of the Court of Owls who split from the group for their own nefarious agendas, and it's revealed in flashbacks that Oliver's own parents, Robert and Moira, were in fact members of this group, and another reveal shows that Robert and Moira had left the Ninth Circle and the higher-ups, not wanting to have their existence known, sabotaged the Queen's Gambit, which in turn made Oliver who he is today. Now, the end of the season would see the Ninth Circle leaders wiped out, with Merlyn sacrificing his own life to save them. Team Arrow then continues to operate in Star City, and Oliver decides to step into the light as he takes charge of Queen Consolidated and forges a strong alliance with Star City and promises to continue his parents' legacy. And now we cap off our Flash trilogy with the third and final chapter of Wily West's story as the Scarlet Speedster. Now, the villain for this movie will be Daniel West as the Reverse Flash. Whilst I do love Eobard Thawne and would love to see Anthony Starr from The Boys bring him to life, he works as the arch nemesis for Barry the Flash. While I am aware that Wily and Eobard have faced off in the comics, I would rather see a different take on the Reverse Flash in live action, since we've already seen Eobard in the TV show, which is why for this I would go for Daniel's Reverse Flash, who we actually get to see on screen. He's only been seen in the New 52 comics, so yeah, I would want to bring him to life on the big screen for Wily as the Flash. Now, this movie would also see the reveal that Barry Allen is in fact alive and well and has been keeping the Speed Force alive all this time, and after an intense battle, both Wily and Barry team up to take down Daniel, who is imprisoned in the Speed Force as the new battery in place of Barry. It's a fate worse than death, but what can I tell you? Now, despite being freed from the Speed Force, Barry has no desire to return to his life as a superhero, and decides to settle down with Iris, the two finally getting married at the film's conclusion, with Wily leading the Star Labs crew as the one and only Flash. And next up we come to Wonder Woman 3, which will focus on Diana as the new leader of the Justice League. Now, as a recap here, the original JLA lineup, which consisted of Superman, Martian Manhunter, The Flash, you can go watch the video. That lineup fell apart in the aftermath of Batman's betrayal, and in order to combat Ra's, Bruce formed a new reserve team of heroes. This team, combined with Diana and Martian Manhunter, have now become the new Justice League, dubbed the Justice League International, and they currently assist with major incidents and natural disasters. Regarding storylines, this film will see the US government attempt to rein in the League, with Batman dead and the former members no longer involved, as the leader of this movement against the JL International is none other than Maxwell Lord. Now, this movie would see Maxwell Lord purchase the rights to the Watchtower, making him the de facto benefactor of the League. Oliver, who's had his fair share of run-ins with rich people, is skeptical of Lord's intentions, and he's right to be cautious, as it then transpires that Maxwell Lord wants to franchise the League and create superhero teams for the entire world, with the starting point being the JL International and the secret agenda being Maxwell Lord wants to control and influence the high powers. Diana and the team break into Lord's building, and after getting into the science labs of Max's company, Diana and Oliver discover that Max has somehow been able to reconstruct Red Tornado, previously seen with the Justice Society in World War II on the shores of Omaha Beach. Diana remembers Red Tornado's sacrifice, but the League is interrupted when Max shows up and says he now has the authority to disband the team now that they've broken into his company. However, Cisco has managed to copy all of Lord's plans onto a hard drive, and the League is able to escape. With the Watchtower itself unsafe, Oliver and Cisco head to Gotham for the assistance of the Bat family in exposing Maxwell Lord's plans. This eventually works, and Lord's plans are then exposed to the world. Eventually it comes down to a battle of the JLI and Red Tornado against Maxwell Lord and his army of androids. Another point I want to bring up in this film is that Max, by examining the remains of Red Tornado, has successfully managed to copy the cybernetics and create an army of android robots. Eventually the robots themselves are defeated and Max is incapacitated and sent to prison for his crimes. Now, Max's company Lord Tech is then brought out by Queen Consolidated, and the team continues to operate, now with the backing of Oliver, who's essentially taken Bruce's role as the main source of funding. And the first major change is that Oliver funds the construction of the Hall of Justice to act as a new HQ, which leads to the Watchtower itself being decommissioned. Now, with the Justice League reassembled, or at least a version of them currently active, it's now time to focus on a new corner of this world, and that would be the supernatural. Now, the first of these is an HBO Max series focused on John Constantine, who I hope shows up in Gunn's DCU at some point, as he begins to suspect that Lucifer has a presence on Earth. Now, I know Trigon is technically the devil in the comics, but this is my way of incorporating some of the characters from the Lucifer show into the DCU. The story takes John to Los Angeles, where the presence of the devil is in fact the strongest, and he discovers that this Lucifer is in fact from a parallel universe, where he gave up ruling hell and decided to take a vacation to Los Angeles, only to end up in this universe through some unknown means. With Lucifer also in this world, this also ends up dragging a couple of the characters from his world into it. This includes Chloe Decker, Eda Lopez, Dan Espinosa, and Maze from that world as well. But yeah, essentially it's a supernatural buddy cop show as Constantine teams up with Lucifer and his friends at the LAPD to solve the case. It eventually transpires that Lucifer and his friends were brought here as part of some sort of prophecy, although the prophecy itself has been carved in an old language. Whilst Lucifer returns to working with the LAPD and his friends for the time being, John decides to take the prophecy and decipher it. The events of Constantine Hell on Earth then bring us to the events of Justice League Dark, where it sees John himself build his own Justice League to help defend against whatever threat this prophecy has predicted, and also to focus on any supernatural threats to this world. John travels to all the corners of the DC universe and eventually manages to recruit a few quote-unquote supernatural heroes to his cause. These include Boston Brand, aka Deadman, Zatanna Zatara, Swamp Thing, John Stewart Green Lantern, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I did want to put Dr. Fate in here, but he's retired, at least in this universe. The group teams up to take on Dr. June Moon, aka Enchantress, who seeks to use her magic on the rest of the world, but the team is able to overpower and defeat her. We can also establish that Constantine gives John Stewart the prophecy he discovered, with the Green Lantern discovering this is somewhat in line with the prophecy he once heard on Oa, the home planet of the Green Lanterns. This film would end with both Constantine and John theorising that a great evil is in fact on the way. So, moving back to Superman and the final part of his trilogy, this movie will finally see Lex Luthor become a villain. Now, I want to establish that Lex has been in the shadows planning to get rid of Superman for his own nefarious agendas, and so hatches a plan. Using some teleportation tech he was able to reverse engineer from the Watchtower being decommissioned, he lures Superman into a trap, sending the Man of Steel to Warworld, where he faces off against Mongul. Clark is able to fight off the gladiators and manages to return to Earth several months later, and discovers that Luthor has become the President of the United States. Through some investigative journalism, Lois is able to expose Luthor's criminal activities, and he is immediately removed from office. In the aftermath, Lex dons his power armor and tries to kill Superman in one final act of revenge, which fails and ends with Lex being sent to prison on Stryker's Island. Clark and Lois then get married at the end of the film, with a hint towards Lois in fact being pregnant with baby Jonathan, aka Superboy. And now we come to Season 2 of Green Lantern. Now, this show is integral to the final part of this universe, serving as the quote-unquote Thor Ragnarok of this phase, that being it ties directly into the big team-up movie. This show will in fact see the re-emergence of Volthoom, the first being in the entire universe to ever wield a lantern ring, and he brings with him Krona, the Guardian who first harnessed the power of will into a glove, and became corrupted with power which led to his exile. With Howard retired, Carl and Guy both occupied on other missions, and Jessica defending Earth as its Green Lantern, John begrudgingly works with Sinestro, who knows a lot of the Guardian's history, and is the prime candidate to help take on Volthoom and Krona. It eventually comes down to a big fight between Volthoom and Krona versus the entire Green Lantern Corps. Krona is killed by Kyle, but reveals the true purpose of Volthoom. Now, Sinestro is about to kill the first being to ever wield a lantern ring, but Carl stops him and reveals the true purpose of Volthoom, that he serves as the lock and key to the cage holding Necron and Blackhand. Sinestro ignores these warnings and kills Volthoom, snapping his neck. The lanterns restrain Sinestro and put him back in his cell on Oa, whilst John and the remaining human lanterns of Jess, Carl and Guy meet up to discuss their next move. However, they are unable to come up with a fast plan, as Oa is shrouded in darkness. The blackest night has arrived. And we have finally arrived at the final Justice League movie and the final part of Phase 3, Blackest Night. This movie sees all the remaining DC heroes, including the previously retired Barry and Hal, team up to take on the newly revived Black Lantern Corps, with Necron having resurrected the previously dead heroes and villains as his soldiers in this war, with Black Hand leading the charge. The conflict is brutal, with Barry being killed by the resurrected Batman. The Black Lanterns are on the verge of bringing death to the entire universe, and Wily's able to escape into the Speed Force, with Constantine being able to tag along because, what do you expect, he's magic. Anyway, Wily and John end up in the void as they witness the Black Lanterns overpower the remaining heroes and killing all life on Earth. Wily is distraught and tells John they had to do something, but John says there's only one thing they possibly could do: wipe the slate clean. Wily realises that John is talking about another flashpoint, and we discover that this timeline is the result of Barry Allen fixing his own mistakes. And Wily is able to see the results of the flashpoint timeline, where Thomas Wayne's Batman and Zod's forces took over the world, and Eobard Thawne attempted to kill his archenemy. It was only with the help of Thomas that Barry could escape, and that resulted in the creation of this new timeline. Now, Wily is left with no other choice. He goes back to the very night he gained his powers and stops the destruction of the particle accelerator, determined by John as the event that set this timeline into motion. Now, Wily stops the explosion at the cost of his own life and erasure from the timeline. However, Barry feels a disturbance in the Speed Force once this timeline is remade and comes across Wily, managing to rescue him, and we discover what changed. The timeline has been corrected in the way that successfully prevented the death of the universe in Blackest Night, with some exposition dialogue revealing that in this timeline, Sinestro had been prevented from killing Volthoom and was imprisoned in his cell back on Oa, with Corona and the First Lantern both being placed in a prison at the edge of the universe. We then see Wily join the Titans as another shot sees Barry and this world's Justice League defending the world as the screen fades to black. And with that, we've reached the conclusion of my DC universe. After a lot of blood, sweat and tears, I have finally been able to deliver to you guys my own and ideal take on the DC lore and its characters. If you guys enjoyed this video and want to see me do another universe pitch for another franchise, then be sure to let me know in the comments. I would love to do another one. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment and subscribe for more videos. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all soon.